Hey guys, and welcome back to the Path to Exile Podcast, episode 39, partnered with Mobalytics. I am Kyle Torak, and joining me per usual is Miso Shiro and Dead Rabbit. And if you're new here, we have our audio-only format on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So if you don't like watching us, or you want to listen to us while you're at work or at the gym, check us out over there, and please give us a rating. It actually helps us out quite a lot. This week we have one of the legends of Path of Exile. I tried to figure out a way to summarize you on my on my stream the other day because someone was just like, "I haven't seen Dreamcore's content. How would you describe him?" And I couldn't even describe your content is very hard. The best way I could do it in a sentence was like, you're an ESPN analyst if you weren't shit at your job. Like, you're actually a good meta analysis type of guy. How would you describe your content for someone who's never seen you before?
It's mostly just like mechanics breakdowns and being interested in like how different items interact with each other and how, different modifiers and things like that interact. Like I like unique items a lot, for example, I like ascendancies and things like that. So yeah, it's mostly just that kind of stuff.
Awesome. You recently started a podcast with Palstron. First, before we talk about that, are you still doing the other podcast with Try still?
I am still doing it. Yeah, it's mainly a
Sweet,
PoE 2 pod. We did do a few PoE 1 podcasts for that, but yeah, we'll be getting back to it now when it come out for 0.5.
Can you go ahead and plug your podcast with Palstron? And will you guys be doing PoE 2 content on it as well?
We will be, yeah. It's the PoE report. So we started for 3.28 for Mirage. We do 4 podcasts each league release. So one before the league actually launches, and then one each week after for 3 weeks. And it's just a podcast with me and Pau together, and then we bring on a new guest every week. So there's always 3 people discussing whatever's going on. Bit of speculation, before the league actually launches, and then some analysis after that. So yeah, it's been a fun thing.
Yeah, I've been enjoying the hell out of it. Before we dive into the full-on conversation, how are you enjoying? Like, I love asking this to the PoE 1 veterans. We're like reaching this cycle of the PoE 1, PoE 2 league, where it's every 4 months we're getting something new. Are you enjoying the absolute hell out of it? Some people complain about ARPG fatigue. I don't know if you're dabbling in all the other ARPGs or you're just a PoE Andy, but how are you enjoying this new era we're entering?
So I would say I do have a bit of PoE fatigue. I'll be honest. I do get burnt out of both games when I play a lot. I don't really play any other ARPG, and I haven't played any before this. Like, this was PoE for me was the first ARPG I played, and it was just a game that just kind of landed for me. So it was one of those things. And then obviously PoE 2 was just like a natural fit because that's the same company. But yeah, for me, I think the whole sort of PoE 1, PoE 2 back and forth, it can work, and I can see where it's going, like with them now separating the teams, and you're going to have the quality there as well for both games. I definitely do get a bit fatigued with it though, but I think that's just one of those things. Like, it's knowing when to kind of step away from a game when you've had enough, and then you're going to come back. Because that was always the magic of PoE 1. Like, back before PoE 2 came along, it was that if you didn't like a league or if you felt like you were burned out, you could just step away because you knew there was going to be another league in a month or whatever, right? Or 2 months or however long it was going to be. You just always knew it was going to be there. So that's something that we as, PoE 2 players or PoE 1 players or both, we kind of have that, that reliability there that we can just come back and play the next release whenever it comes out.
Yeah, that's how I played for the longest time. I mean, back in the day with PoE 1, I was like, if I didn't like a league, I was just like, all right, I'm just going to dip out on this one, and then next league, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It's nice that it's like that because, that especially with GGG as well, they're a company that likes to take risks with their products, right? They like to do a league where they take a risk with something that's just maybe it hasn't been done in this genre before. Perhaps it's something a bit ridiculous. Maybe it's a bit wacky. They don't really go safe very often with a lot of their league mechanics, and that's why you get these like really big winners, and then you get some really big losers as well, right? With the leagues, most of the time you get something good. Sometimes it's really bad. Like, for example, Necropolis was absolutely awful in PoE 1. I'm sure everyone can get around from that league, but it's nice that it's there and they have this system going on because you just always know that if you don't like something, you can come back. And there's also the thing there where they like roll the mechanic into the core game. Then if you've had a really fun time with a league, you can probably be pretty sure that league's going to go into the core game in some form because most of the time that's what they do. So it's a good system.
I mean, speaking of like leagues that kind of didn't go that well, it's kind of like I'm really interested in why they decided, hey, you know what? ToTA was a thing that didn't really work that well, but we're just gonna, bring it back for Path of Exile 2 and see how that goes. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna do some edits and changes to it, but it's interesting why, they actually ended up and bringing it back or deciding that they're gonna bring back.
ToTA's a funny one. Like ToTA is actually my favorite league ever in PoE 1. That league was quite divisive for the league mechanic itself, but what the league did for the core game in terms of buildcraft was absolutely ridiculous. Like there's only been a few leagues that I've played, like in my memory, for example, 3.27 was one of them because of all the Foulborn uniques. But for ToTA, it added all of the tattoo system, and that was just ridiculous for buildcraft at the time because tattoos in the base league, like back then, they were crazy. They were way stronger than they were that they are now in the core game. They were really, really powerful, and that just made it so you could make ridiculous builds that like you can't now, right? So there was just I personally actually liked the league mechanic as well. I know that some people didn't, but just for the base game, for what it did for buildcraft, it was incredible.
Mm. And for our viewers, I guess, who don't know what tattoos are because they're not in PoE2 yet, can you explain a little bit what they are?
Yeah, so they're items where you can basically customize your passive tree. So originally, the concept was that you could, apply them to like the travel nodes, for example, the small nodes between the main clusters on the tree. You could apply them on like a +10 strength node in PoE 1, and you could get, for example, +6 fire resistance or +3 all attributes. I think was one of the stats, right? And they had like a bunch of different ones. They've kind of balanced them a bit more now into the core game, so they're not quite as strong. Back in that league, like in the ToTA league, you could even tattoo some of the notables as well, and you get like +1 level of skill gems and things like that. So there was really strong tattoos. But nowadays it's more of like a thing that's used mostly to like shore up a build. Like you have, you're going for block cap, you might be able to slot in a few tattoos to finish off your block cap. Like you might be able to slot in a few resistance tattoos to fix some of your resistances and things like that. So it's less of like there are still ways to use it in strong ways, but it's more of a way to kind of fix your build.
Yeah, that's what I noticed about tattoos. Real kind of random question here. We've talked about how, like in Fate of the Vow, how this economy might like kind of like for future leagues, kind of like put people off like on their expectations for like how the economy should play, or with how much divine we're getting this league. If we don't get this much next league, it's going to be like future leagues won't feel as fun. You just mentioned how in this previous PoE 1 league, how the power you had from that build craft, that borrowed power from that league was so big and powerful. It was one of your favorite leagues because of it. Is that like a similar like effect where it's like if giving the player too much like do you like look back and you're like I miss that, or is it like a captured moment in time that you treasure and it didn't sour other leagues for you? Because I've always wondered if too much borrowed power could end up like having the same effect as too much economy power like Fate of the Vow might have.
That's an interesting question actually. Back quite a long time ago, around patch 3.15, I think, was when they made the change. What they used to do in PoE 1 is that they would have these borrowed power mechanics in every league, but at the end of every league, the whole league would just go into the core game wholesale, and they wouldn't do like any or almost any changes at all. And there was just ridiculous power creep for so many leagues in a row because of that, what they were doing there. And then in patch 3.15, they had a huge like nerf apocalypse. For a lot of people, this was like the worst league ever, right? When it happened, because like there was a massive nerf apocalypse, and they also changed their philosophy completely to one where when it got to the end of a league, whether it was a good league or a bad league, they would really, really consider how this thing was going to go core, if it was going to go core. There's actually been many leagues since then that haven't gone core. They've never come back, right? For example, Scourge has never come back into the game, right? They like reused the monsters in a different mechanic, but the actual mechanic itself, it's never come back. So they kind of decided that this was a way to fix the whole like power creep exploding, right? So the whole idea of like how borrowed power affects the game on a league to league basis, and whether like you wish that you could sort of play a different patch, that's definitely an interesting one. I think what they do in a really clever way is each league they kind of provide very similar access to power, but they do it in a different way. And it's always like an interesting way where you have to engage with the league mechanic, right? And that's kind of their way that they slot it into a build, whether it's tattoos onto your tree or, for example, in Sanctum you had like a relic that would give you some powerful stats. In Scourge you had those things like the corrupted modifiers. There's just lots of different ways to add that borrowed power into the game, but I think as long as they keep it interesting enough that you can make cool builds in that patch, right? As long as cool builds are accessible in that patch, then people can always be excited that when a new league is coming up, like here's a new mechanic that's being added to the game, and that new mechanic is now allowing me to make some cool new stuff. So that alone should make it so that you're not thinking, oh, I wish I was playing this other patch, right?
That makes sense. Yeah, that was a good answer. We're all about getting into the full swing of PoE 2. Miso and Rabbit, you two are finally back to the grind. How have your streams been going? Miso, let's start with you.
Good. It's been great to see everybody again. Kind of like this is really the Path of Exile kind of cycle where it's like off season, I go and play something else. The people who watch kind of start dwindling a little bit, and then as we start ramping back up for the new season, when you play the game, people, you see some familiar faces come back and hang out, and it's always fun to see everybody again. And it's kind of like, I'm very privileged that these people are returning every single time I'm coming back to Path of Exile 2. Though, it would be great if they didn't leave in the first place, but
on the topic of ToTA though, is it even going to be like a fully fledged league mechanic in PoE 2, or is it just going to be thematically worked in as a new Ascendancy trial? Because that's kind of my
Ascendancy
trial, right? Yeah. I don't know if it was like it's far up the list for coming league mechanics, I would say. So maybe it's
I'm excited to see what they do with ToTA and PoE 2. Yeah. I was thinking about it, like the whole like auto battler thing. I'm not convinced it will be an auto battler in PoE 2. I was thinking like, how can they fit this into PoE 2 and have it actually be like a mechanic where it's different enough from Trial of the Sekimas and Trials of Chaos, so that it's kind of distinguished from them, but it's also like similar in difficulty level and like length of time and stuff like that. Maybe it's some kind of like boss battler thing where you kind of like just kill bosses, like because they've got all like the chieftains, right? That's the whole idea of the Trial of the Ancestors. You've got like these different chieftains that are then part of like one tribe each, and they kind of battle against each other. Perhaps you'll just be battling the tribe chieftain, and kind of it's like a battling event thing where you kind of scale up, and there's like tiers. I don't know.
The little teaser, or like, is it a teaser? But like maybe the little tidbit that we have until now is the kind of wave fighting against the waves that we do when we get to the map before we get the tattoos for a character, where either you get the attributes or the resistances. It's like we just click the thing in the middle, and then we have like 2 or 3 waves. That might be a little bit of a hint to what it might be. What might be looking. Maybe we fight like waves or something, or like you did. There's probably, I think there's some unique ways to pull it off, because we have 2 very controversial Ascendancy trials right now. Even I like most of the time when the talk is around Sekimas, people either love it, like for example I do, or people absolutely hate it. And I've even heard people enjoy Trial of Chaos now. So we have 2 very, very interesting things already with the Ascendancy trial. So I'm super excited to see what it will be. I think thematically it's a home run. I think overall, and that has been something that we've echoed here on this podcast like a lot as well, just design-wise, thematically, vibe-based stuff in PoE 2 is just like, for me, it's just a home run all the way. And yeah, I think Trial of the Ancestors just thematically fits in super, super well, no matter what they really do with it. I don't think it's going to be maybe like a fully fledged league mechanic, but at least we're going to see what it will look like. Maybe even in 0.5 with the new Ascendancy trial. So you think it's going to come in 0.5?
I think they are going to be trying to knock our socks off with this patch, and if they can get anything in, they will. Like I'm on a big Acopium train here. I'm saying ToTA. I'm saying a duelist with swords. I'm saying ToTA. I'm saying Act 5. Like I'm overhyping this patch too much. So I wouldn't say saying too seriously.
It has like in Essential Trial has endgame implications, right? Because Trial of Chaos and Trial of Sekemas especially are both things that a lot of people choose to do way into the end game. Even though it is by nature very repetitive content, people still enjoy the hell out of doing Sekemas over and over again, or even doing Trial of Chaos over and over again. So I would definitely say that even though they announced this next update to be completely endgame focused, having a new Essential Trial would fit in very well with that, depending on what it will look like, because it might end up being a completely separate endgame activity that a lot of players will once again enjoy, which is not named maps or whatever it may be. So, and then on top of that, league mechanic or whatever it is, you might be right. I don't think Act 5 is coming. I've been saying that over and over again. I just don't feel it. I personally think it's not like.
The reason why I'm not fully believing Act 5 is because we would only they put the work into making the interlude acts only to have them around for a single patch. Like that's a lot of I don't know how much time it was put into it. Maybe a single dev did it over a weekend or something, but it's it's
Yeah.
It wasn't like the game was supposed to originally launch with Acts 1 through 6, and then they pivoted to like redoing Acts 1 through 3 and with the end game. So I feel like most of the acts are almost done anyways, so who knows?
I don't think we'll see Act 5 in this patch. I think when they add Act 5, they'll also want to add 6 at the same time, because from what we've heard, 6 is quite short. I think it's like half the length of a normal act is what they said. So it's like the whole concept of the act is that it's really like heavy, full on, right? Like constant, like boss fight after boss fight after boss fight, and you kind of get this like epic finale to the campaign.
Cool.
So I think that when they add Act 5, it'll also be with 6, and that will be the full release. Whether that's coming, at the end of this year, then who knows? But I also think in terms of like ascendancies, I don't really know what we'll see in this patch, if there is one coming. But I think they'll definitely want to add Templar with Act 5, because that's something that they can kind of like package together, like thematically. You've got the Templar, and obviously you've got the Return to Oriath. So that's something that I expect to come in 1.0.
You're the first person I've heard make that Templar to Act 5 comparison. Interesting.
Yeah, that's something that is something that I noticed they like to do that quite often, is like make a sort of thematic connection between things and then like package it as a patch, right? It might not really matter for 1.0 because they don't really need the whole like branding thing, right? Because this is the full release at the end of the day. Like this is the big one, right? That's the whole game packaged at that point. They're probably gonna brand the whole thing around the kind of final boss or whatever ends up being the Seed of Corruption or whatever. Like that's going to be the branding, and the whole Beyond theme and stuff that's going on is probably going to be what they're going to be focused on for that. But yeah, Templar does definitely make sense for that, and maybe they'll do more like totem stuff and things like that, and flails. I'm interested to see what flails end up being. Like, how are they going to kind of make them feel different from maces and things?
Hammered in.
Hammered in, yeah.
Just give us a hammered in.
It's gonna be Crusader from Diablo 3.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, there is some very, very clear inspirations that you can take from both the Diablo 2 Paladin and the Diablo 3 Crusader. I still think like I personally, you hear like very differentiating stuff as well from a lot of people. I really enjoyed Diablo 3, and I especially really enjoyed the Crusader. So I don't think it would be a bad thing if there were some similarities to the old Crusader from Diablo 3 into this game. We'll see. I am especially excited for the Templar. Always has been. It's like my number one priority when it comes to the next class. If I could just choose it, Templar sounds awesome. I like strength, and I like the whole idea behind armor, energy shield on life based or whatever it is, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I talked about this with my chat the other day, by the way. Do you guys think when there's like, let's say there's a Templar class, do you guys think there's gonna be a new damage type? Because people always ask, like, Templar needs to be like holy damage, right? But is that just gonna be physical damage? Because I said to my chat as well, I don't think there's gonna be another damage type.
No.
And
It'd be
they're
like
just
PoE
gonna
because we have
shoehorn-
holy skills in PoE 1, right? And they do fire
Yeah.
physical mostly, right?
Right.
Or is it just fire?
Lightning. It's like
Oh, it's
fizz to lightning
Is
conversion.
the fire lightning? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
So yeah, we've already have holy skills in PoE 1, so it'd be. I mean, it'd be cool, but they just reworked a bunch of Templars or like holy skills in PoE 1 with Mirage League, so that seemed very much like it was preparing for Templar in some way.
It could have been a hint. Yeah, it definitely could have been a hint. Yeah, Templar is going to be interesting. I think Marauder will be interesting as well, because the only thing we really heard about Marauder is that they have like axes that they can throw, which is something that could be quite fun to play around with. But there's all sorts of like interesting weapon types that PoE 2 has in the background that haven't been added yet, and you're just thinking like, what's that going to be? What are they doing with like traps, for example? Traps are interesting. How are they going to pull that off? Like traps being a weapon type in PoE 2 rather than just a skill type is something there's going to be a difference between the two games. So yeah, I'm just happy. I want to see those things in the game. Like I just want those things to just get in there, dude. Get in the game. Come on. All the weapon types in the classes and stuff. Come on.
I do think there still is some wiggle room though with like weapon types and even weapons in the game, because like talismans weren't the thing originally, right? If you looked at the earliest footage of druids / like they made like this whole wheel, I think in ExileCon 2019, where they put all of the weapons on each quadrant or like area. They didn't have talisman there, so I still think there's a little bit of wiggle room there for them to be like, hey, we'll add this weapon type, or we'll take this weapon type out. Like I think there's some play there.
I think in general, the whole sorry. Guest goes first.
Go on, you go.
I think in general, the whole weapon system as opposed to a class system is a little bit, to me, that sounds a little bit like future proofing, because in my opinion, you can always add on to that pretty easily. You can definitely do that with classes as well, and specific skills that are tied to to classes as opposed to weapon skills. For me, it just sounds easier done on these specific weapon types, because you just add a new weapon type and all classes can use it, like a talisman, for example, and you can just basically just put that onto everything else much more easy. So I think there's definitely I don't think in 10 years of PoE 2 we're just gonna have the ones that we will have on launch or whenever it may be.
Yeah, I was talking about this with my chat the other day. It'd be cool if they added hybrid weapons. So, like, let's say they added claws, and claws can use the same skills as both daggers and spears. So you all have that one weapon set, but it can like multi-weapon stuff. Like, there's a lot of weird shit they could potentially do with weapons long term. I think it's a really cool system. So, yeah.
That's
I love it.
I want to see skills that can be shared between weapon types.
Same.
That's something that I've been looking for a while, where it makes sense, obviously. But that's one of my biggest gripes with PoE 2 is the kind of shoehorning of particular skills and weapon types, and how you're kind of limited by it, right? And I do think that's something that will be addressed long term, because obviously, the more and more skills they add for a particular weapon type, the less those builds that are playing that weapon type are going to look similar, right? They're going to slowly kind of branch out and have more and more options. So you're not going to have like every build using, Hammer of the Gods, for example, if it's a mace build, right? Because there would be other options that they can pick instead. But that's definitely something I'd like to see, where when it actually makes sense, you should be able to use, like, for example, some of the kind of heavy hitting, like slam themed quarterstaff skills why not, let them use it with a mace instead, right? Or maybe the other way around. You have like some of those quarterstaff abilities, and maybe or some of the mace abilities can use a quarterstaff. So that's something I'd like to see them kind of mess around with. I can't really see. I know that question was asked at one point. I do remember. I can't remember what interview it was in, but at some point Jonathan was asked about that, and he said that he thinks the weapon swap system should be solving that. But I think part of the problem there with the weapon swap system, from that particular viewpoint, where you kind of want to switch between two weapon types to use actual damage skills, right, is that for a lot of builds that we see in PoE 2, the weapon swap is used as a way to like boost your damage, like a utility boost, to boost your damage of your main weapon set. So you might use it for a curse setup or something like that. Having two completely crafted weapons, right, or it might be like a corrupted unique or something, some crazy item, but having two weapons that you need to use and one in each slot, that's a lot more expensive than a build that just uses one. And I think just generally speaking, that's also, you just add an immediate disadvantage, right? Because if you're using two skills like that, the other build that's using one skill is getting tons of damage from utility. So I don't know.
Yeah, that
I
vision
don't really
doesn't
think
exist.
it solves it in that way that he was saying.
No, agreed. That vision does not exist in this game. If your weapon set 2 is used for mobility, marking, cursing, like min-maxing your your main weapon set that's doing the primary damage, usually for single target or something. You will never see like that vision of like, I'm using the best bow and the best mace and weapon set 2 to do this cool combo. That doesn't exist in the game. Like, not like that at all, really. Like, you could do it
just
at like a low
impossible
tier
to pull off properly, right? Like, it's really hard to pull off. You don't have enough points for a start on the base class. Like, you could probably do it on Witch Hunter, but on like a base class, you just don't have enough points to pull it off properly with two different weapon sets.
Yeah.
If a Witch Hunter isn't doing it, no other class is ever going to do it, because
and then you have the restriction on Witch
points.
Hunter, right, with the gem sockets. Like, that is something that like I love that node. Has to be one of my favorite nodes in the game, right? Like, the amount of times I've been looking at that and thinking like, this is so cool. Like, I can do something with this, and then I get to the passive tree and I'm like, I can't do this because like the pathing is just horrible. Like, it ends up looking absolutely disgusting, right? You're just like taking 10 points to move around a dual socket. I mean, come on, man. Like, that is such a cool node, but they need to do something with it. Like, I just don't think it's really working like they wanted it to, right? The whole point of Weapon Master is that you actually do use two weapons. Like, that is their whole theme of that thing. And I think there needs to be some kind of bypass there, specifically for Witch Hunter with the gem sockets, with the dual sockets, right? Like, other classes, that's fine if you make the restriction, but Witch Hunter needs to bypass that restriction somehow, so that you can actually, fulfill that concept they were going for with the two weapon sets.
I'm all for Witch Hunter buffs on this podcast. More Witch Hunter buffs, yay!
Don't celebrate too early. You know how much they like downsides. What if the next one? Is on the second weapon set? You can go through dual slots. They're just gonna be disabled. It's going to be the downside.
Yeah. To be honest,
that would be a PvE2 thing.
That would still be a huge buff.
Yeah,
like,
that would be a huge buff.
That would still be a huge buff.
That would be good, right?
Moving, like, anything like that would be fine, because the whole power of that node is that, like, you're speccing it. First of all, you're choosing to pick it, right? Once you pick that node, you're taking on this massive, like, opportunity cost anyway, so you're already kind of committing to two separate trees, basically, because what you're saying with that choice is, my 24 points that I had before is not enough to do what I wanted to do before, so now I'm using all of my points, right, to do like this split tree. So I think the trade-off of not that's great. Just do that. Make it so the dual sockets don't do anything, and allow you to make like two different trees.
Yeah. I was just thinking, because the Pathfinder basically, like, if the Pathfinder is able to just start at the same time in another part of the two, why is that not a thing? This just seems like an oversight. I honestly think that seems.
I mean, look at where Witch Hunters come from 0.1. Like, they're just kind of like, that Ascendancy passive used to be ass, and then they were just like, okay, it's bad with this many. Let's give them all of the passive points as weapon set 2s. I think there's only been two people I've seen really push it well, Prada and Jung. And Jung wasn't like Jung's build was just fucking ridiculous. That was the oil grenade build where each weapon
that's gone.
like do it, and that's
That's
just getting gone. And then Prado I believe uses Witch Hunter primarily for mobility for weapon set too. But like it's never been like the ideal, which would be some weird bow mace combo like you're talking about. And I think removing the sockets would be a great.
It is.
I mean, I would league start Witch Hunter absolutely. I mean, I probably already am, but it definitely would if that was coming. That sounds so fun to make builds around.
Yeah, let's just not talk about sorcery ward then, so it doesn't.
No, yeah, don't nerf
please.
sorcery ward. Please keep it exactly as is.
Yeah, let's just.
It is not overpowered at all. GGG.
Yes. No, sorcery ward is
Leave
fine.
that
Guys.
You
Completely
mentioned
fine.
Pathfinder there. What do you guys think about that, being able to start from another class position? Because, so a bit of context here, if you guys don't know, they didn't add Scion to PoE 2, right? And Scion in PoE 1 is starting right in the middle of the tree. And one of the things that they said about not adding Scion to PoE 2 is that they didn't really like how it made it so that this one class could kind of reach two sides of the tree very easily, right? And kind of, path through the middle of the tree, basically, just to get to some very powerful nodes. But essentially, the Pathfinder can kind of do that now. In a way, right? You can get to an area of the tree that previously would have taken so many points to get to. How do you guys feel about that? Do you think that's something that's... Because it almost feels a little bit... I know that it's one specific class, and it does start on one side of the tree, and that's quite a big difference compared to the Scion, which was right in the middle. But yeah, it's definitely something that kind of goes a little bit against what they originally had in mind there.
I think part of it is like that it's one class, like you said, but the other thing is that it's not like Scion where it reaches every quad, like it's right in the middle, right? It's limited to warrior and the Sork witch side of things. So you can't go druid, you can't go huntress, you start there. You can't go monk, right? You only can do north and southwest. So maybe that is enough to like be a little bit more limiting. At least from what I've seen so far, I haven't seen any Pathfinders do anything absolutely insane with that node, but who knows?
Yeah, not with that node. With other nodes, I've seen Pathfinders doing the new global, changing their passives, whatever, to global defenses and stuff, or global damage. I've seen people use that on Pathfinder well, but I haven't seen really anyone... I haven't been blown away by the 2 slots. If it was more free, like Miso just said, if you could do Merc, Shadow, or Druid, it would maybe be really, really good, but right now it's kind of limited. I haven't been inspired to do that yet, though. So
I mean, the usability to Dreamcore's question, the usability of it is kind of reduced in its own right already a little bit. That the actual start of the Pathfinder is just so much better than the other 2 parts that are offered to the Pathfinder. So that's why it's not quite like the Scion in PoE 1, I would say, because it's just, yes, it's a cool bonus, and I think a lot of people, I haven't really checked Ninja on most of the Pathfinder builds in a while, but there's probably some people that utilize it in a very, very cool way or whatever, but it's always going to be like the actual start of the Pathfinder is just, it's always going to be the best start. It's probably the best part of the passage in PoE 2 anyway. Yeah, it's so much movement speed. It's all the crit nodes in there. It's always going to be good. What I personally like, and also and what I like mostly, and we've discussed this a lot about ascendancies in PoE 2 as well, it just makes the Pathfinder a little bit more versatile, and I personally just really like versatile ascendancies. That's why I love the introduction of the Oracle in the last patch, because I just see it as a super, super versatile ascendancy that you can basically do anything on and just do well, without it being a case of can do everything but nothing really in a good way, because the Oracle showed that it is not only able to do everything, but also do it in a way where it's actually good and can challenge the best other ascendancies in the game. And we talked about this a little bit. We had the critique of that a little bit, that the power of ascendancies sometimes takes a little bit of a backseat in PoE 2, and everything gear dependent. And once you have this GG gear in the end game, the ascendancy kind of takes a backseat. I would say that's a good thing, but also like a big critique of that we, especially here on the podcast, had of the game, because there are a lot of builds where when you have the GG gear, the ascendancy doesn't really matter. You can play plants on a Titan. You can play ED Contagion on any of the caster builds. You can play like cast on Crit Comet with Spark on basically every ascendancy. And that is due to so much power, once again, being on gear rather than on the passive tree and the ascendancies. So yeah. So it's like a two-sided sword or whatever. I like the variety in some of the ascendancies and especially the Pathfinder, but also at the same time, there is still too much power on gear probably, and all the ascendancies kind of lose their identity at one certain point when the gear gets really good.
I look at Pathfinder right now. I'm curious what Miso thinks about this, because I consider Miso one like I've seen Miso play Pathfinder a few times, and I played it 3 times now. I feel like Pathfinder has like a crisis of identity right now. It's changed so much since 0.1. Like I just don't like know how to feel about it. I think that concoctions in general are just like really, really sad right now. I don't know what their direction is with Pathfinder, and seeing them go this like, we're gonna get them this fresh start where they can go to these 2 areas, but only 2. I don't really know what they're doing with Pathfinder right now. Like it's going a very different direction from 0.1. So I have no idea, to be honest.
Yeah, I
Thoughts,
mean,
Miso?
Well, first off, like when we compare it to PoE 1, concoctions of PoE 1 were just a skill, right? You could just use it on any single class. So having it built into the class itself is already an interesting choice. But when it comes to like the Pathfinder Ascendancy, I think that it is kind of supposed to be a little bit of a jack of all trades, but there is that part of it. It feels a little bit weird, right? It's like you have all these like general stuff where it's like, oh, this gives you stuff for potions. This gives you stuff for like more passive skill points. This gives you like movement speed stuff and sprinting. Like, it's all very general. And then all of a sudden you have this like poison part. And you're like, okay, all right. I guess Pathfinder is supposed to be the poison class, I guess. But then like nothing else with the ascendancy really works with poison. I mean, they have the acidic concoction, but like it's not like a poison specific thing. You could use like the explosive one, like the fulminating one, whatever, right? And so it does feel a little bit like it's supposed to be the poison class, but there's not really enough in there to really fully support poisons. And the concoction stuff, I just do think is just a shame. Like the way that they've handled and gone with concoctions, I still disagree with how they're doing concoctions right now. I wish that they kept concoctions in its 0.1 state. It would have been, in my opinion, a lot nicer, because right now nobody uses it, like legitimately.
What all did they change? The big one I know is no heralds. Was there anything else with concoctions? Because I didn't play concoctions until after that change.
Well, they nerfed the damage massively. I don't remember if it was a direct nerf to the skill itself or if it was just the fact that you can't use Widow Hail with it anymore. That was really just like what made the thing die. But it's just, I think right now, fundamentally, the fact that you have to be unarmed means that it's really hard to scale attack speed. It's really hard to scale the damage. It's, no heralds, right? It's just, and they've completely swapped the identity of it, that it's not supposed to be a damaging ability. It's more of like here's a support playstyle to like another playstyle. So it's like supposed to be a combo ability, but it feels very underwhelming as a combo ability when it's like a node on the ascendancy tree.
Yeah, I think they're trying to kind of play into that whole, the ascendancy offers like this unique skill choice. They've done that in quite a few ascendancies. It's really hard to balance that when you do it though, because if you get it wrong, then 50% of your player base are going to be playing Pathfinder in that patch, because you have to get that unique skill. The concoctions are an interesting one. You touched on it being unarmed there. They always had a difficult job balancing unarmed stuff in PoE 1 as well, because it's like, well, you're making the commitment to go unarmed. A lot of the unarmed things in PoE 1 require you to be using, his like a unique pair of gloves. So that means that you're not only having no weapon slot, but you've also lost your glove slot essentially as well. And you kind of have to balance around that. Like, is this a worthwhile trade-off? Usually it's really hard to get it right, because it's like, it's either going to be completely ridiculous or it's just going to be very, very underwhelming. It's kind of hard to make it competitive with the other things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that from a balanced perspective. Because that's been the case for a lot of skills. Like my assumption is Righteous Fire is going to be locked to a Templar Ascendancy. Because GGG says it's going to be functioning differently in this game, so that's just where my brain went. And there's a lot of those skills that have they've released in PoE 2, and they've been like just really bad initially. So I'm guessing that's why GGG is doing that way, so they can work it up to where it's not too overwhelming. Like supporting fire from Tactician is one of the examples. Like it took 2 patches to where it's actually a functional skill, and it's still like a little underwhelming. So that makes sense to me. That like if you do overtune it, you're going to have everyone playing Pathfinder, and that's not, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Why wouldn't Righteous Fire just be a flail skill though, Cal?
GG. Well, I just remember Jonathan said something that Righteous Fire is coming to PoE 2. It's just going to function differently than how it worked in PoE 1.
I feel like it would be kind of sad if it was actually. I feel like it would be kind of sad if it was actually just locked to just the Templar. So I kind of thought maybe in some
it could
way
be a spirit gem. I mean, going to a spirit gem would be a change functionally, but I don't think GGG likes those kind of skills.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, GGG has mentioned that they don't like the play style. Yeah, they don't like the play.
What?
Yeah, they don't like that type of play style for Path of Exile 2. And I think maybe like the idea of it being class specific came up in the Jorgen podcast or something like that.
Yeah, maybe that's where that idea initially came up. I don't remember.
Yeah, I still don't think it's going to be class specific. I think it's going to be just like a regular skill. In fact, if it stays with the same tags, it's probably not even going to be flail specific, because I think Righteous Fire is a spell, right?
It would just be a spell, yeah. I think it'd be a spell, but it won't be sustained like in PoE 1. You'll probably just have to use it every now and again, and maybe it consumes a bunch of your life and energy shield for a duration buff or something. I don't know. But that falls more in line with something that PoE 2 is like, rather than like a sustained thing, because they kind of seem to not like that like passive hands-off kind of gameplay in PoE 2. Kind of interesting though, because Righteous Fire has been and has continued to be one of the most popular builds in PoE 1 league on league. And it's basically been growing. Like every league, it's getting like 1% more players, 1% more players, like just over and over again. Like I think it's the last 3 leagues, it went from like 5% on the ladder to 6%. Now it's like 7%. People really like league starting that skill. So
Miso just did it.
Yep, I did.
Yeah. Very, very fun skill it's my personal favorite for a league starter is Righteous Fire. It's just one of those skills where it's very, very comfortable to league start, and you basically don't need to do any prep at all. You just log in and RF from Act 2 and you're golden.
It's come a long way.
And it could also just be something that might not be as much at the forefront as it is in PoE 1. It could also just be, I don't know if you guys know Holy Fire on the Paladin for Diablo 2. It's like that. It's like a passive aura around you that just damages the enemies, kind of. So I don't know if I think it has an absolute place in PoE 2, and I get the whole situation. I get the whole notion. It's the meaningful combat discussion. It's the vision discussion, whatever it may be. But I feel like if something is this popular among a player base that not just plays PoE 1 but also PoE 2, it has every right to be at least discussed. I would just love it. It's because
as someone who is experienced getting many idle builds nerfed, I don't think GGG wants idle builds to be good. Like they don't want someone to be able to sit there in Simu 3 and just like AFK farm it. Like every AFK Simu build gets deleted.
It doesn't have to be that egregious. It doesn't have to be that way. But in the end, and we talked about this on the podcast as well before, also in PoE 2, even though they are going for the meaningful combat approach and everything, a lot of the min-maxing in the end game is always towards laziness. It's always going to be that. Once your character is strong enough to do all content in the game, what is the min-maxing you do on every single character? You go for more movement speed, and you go for simplification of the build that you're playing. You try to have less buttons. You try to just basically automate your gameplay, right? As much as you can. And that's always going to be a thing in PoE 2. Last patch and this patch, one of the most popular builds were basically just you press mouse 1 and you have cast on critical, killing everything for you. So if they don't want to completely delete or completely remove that type of playstyle, it needs to go for everything. So Spark with cast on critical, or the what's the other one that I didn't use? The elemental weakness spam on the ground. That's a one button build. That basically you can play like this. You close your eyes, you go through the map, and you kill everything on one button. If that exists, then Righteous Fire has every right to exist, in my opinion. If they want to kill it all the way, then it's good. It's fine. But I think it's always going to be part of an ARPG to optimize towards this laziness playstyle.
Well, I think, like, you know, I was doing a lot of research on, like, the vision and what Jonathan has, you know, originally meant by the vision and the meaningful combat and the pace. And the big thing that I saw was for meaningful combat is that Jonathan doesn't mind a one button play style, or like you know, something that is going to be like clearing the screen or whatever. But his whole vision and goal, at least at the beginning, I don't know how it has evolved since then, was that you need to be editing your play style, basically. Like you're not going to approach every single situation with like, all right, this is what I'm going to be doing. It's like, it's okay if this button clears the entire screen, but sometimes you're going to come up against a rare. Sometimes you're going to be coming up against a, you know, the boss, and you're going to have to change up your playstyle. And I actually think that a very good, like, example of this is Wolf. Wolf, I think, is one of the classes that really aligns with what they want for this type of playstyle. Because I was like watching some Wolf gameplay, and it's like, you know, for the most part, they're going around, they're using Lunar Assault to, like, you know, freeze enemies and explode the screen. But then when they come against a really strong rare, every now and then they're going to have to change up to, like, use their regular, like, auto attack skill. Yeah, and use cross slash, just like change up the playstyle a little bit when they come up against a little more of a tankier monster. So that's kind of like what, from what I can tell, is more of Jonathan's vision for what he wants the game to be like, and which is why the whole cast on crit stuff, I think, is completely outside of what he wants it to be. And like the, you know, the idea of Righteous Fire having one ability be the kind of star of the show for like every piece of content is a little bit of, you know, not the direction that he wants to really take the game in. Of course, you know, the game evolves, the game grows since he first started the, you know, 3 years ago, however long it was, might not be the same as today, but at least according to the original idea, that's kind of how he wants to approach it. So, you know, partly for me, I think the way that they're going to approach Righteous Fire is that it's going to be more leaning heavily on the spell side of things, where it's boosting spell power as opposed to being an ability that is going to be a main damaging ability. You know, maybe we'll get some Radiant Grief shenanigans where it's kind of like a Radiant Grief, but I feel like they're just going to...
That is exactly how PoE 1 Righteous Fire started off, by the way. If you don't know the history of PoE 1 Righteous Fire,
I do know.
off as a buff skill, and they didn't even intend for it to be a main ability. But Chris Wilson found it so cool that someone made a build around it being a main skill that he like featured it in like the build of the week thing, and then from that point onwards, like Righteous Fire was a thing.
Yeah.
So that they have the opposite approach now, where you get in build a week and then they delete your build from the
game. Hey, that's such a good call. Yeah, true.
Yeah,
true. The graveyard.
I remember seeing
the graveyard.
I remember seeing Righteous Fire pop up, you know, back in the day for the first time. I thought it was so cool. Like it was a build, but it was a build that was exclusively like end game, uber end game. You had to have like a Combs Heart. You had to have all these HP scaling stuff to make it work. So it's like that's what I was
it just
saying
didn't do-
earlier.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying earlier too about like it's got come a long way because that's how it used to be.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's
even
cool.
like the more recent change where they made it so that it doesn't scale damage off gem levels anymore. Like I don't know when that was, maybe like 5 patches ago or something, when they made it so that it is based on life and energy shield like damage scaling instead. Was a pretty big change for how the build was like approached in terms of scaling. And it's something where like PoE 1 has like so many tools available to you that you can make these like ridiculous builds in the end game with like one scalar, like life stacking and things like that. But Righteous Fire was always balanced very, very well in that way. And there's some like really weird niche items now, like for example, there's a Foulborn Wrathbith Globe, which is just ridiculous, like completely overpowered for that particular setup there. But like just generally speaking, Righteous Fire being balanced off of life was done quite well, I think, for a while, where it just didn't feel overpowered at all, but it felt good. So that's how I would like to see it in PoE. So I'd like it to be something which is, like it resembles Righteous Fire. You kind of know what this skill is, but perhaps they kind of work it into PoE 2 in a way that makes sense for that game. Like you said, I think it's probably going to be more of a boost to other skills, because that's definitely something that PoE 2 likes to lean on a lot, is the interactions of like one skill to another gameplay. So that would make sense where they lean into that a little bit more. Maybe you like use Righteous Fire and it gives you that kind of like fire damage around you, but then it also makes your next, I don't know, X amount of abilities do something fire themed. Like maybe they add fire damage and they do some igniting thing or whatever.
And it also requires 2 power charges to go off.
Of course, yeah, and 3 endurance charges.
Yep.
Yep.
And when you ignite an enemy, you
go.
die.
Actually, that makes me a little sad. Like, weirdly, like you telling that story makes me sad, because like them taking Righteous Fire and being like, "Oh, this is cool. We're seeing the community use something in a way we didn't intend or expect, so we're gonna like give it a little love in like this way or change this way." They don't have that design philosophy in PoE 2. Almost always when there's a skill being used in a way that they don't want, they have reworked the skill. I think 0.1 Magma Barrier is the perfect example of that. It doesn't function like at all like it used to. I think, I would love to ask Jonathan Rogers or Mark about those kind of design decisions, like in reference to Righteous Fire, because they don't seem to. The fun detected me, sure, like. They don't seem to want to like lean into it as much as they in PoE 2 very often. Like concoctions are another example of that. Like
I don't think it is like ridiculous to say, or it's like an over exaggeration to say that with PoE 2 there's definitely more of a vibe coming from GGG that they want to have more control over what is happening in terms of what the game is supposed to be like. And that might have something to do that this game is still very early on and they want to keep it as like a very, very controllable thing for them to do. But that is definitely the case because, like we just said, like in a meme way, most of the build of the weeks have been basically, it has become kind of a meme that in all of the build of the weeks now for PoE 2, that the top comments are always like, "Oh damn, can't wait for this build to die in the next update." And that definitely shows a little bit that apparently right now, I don't know if that is going to be for the future or whatever, but right now they seem to want to keep control on their side a little bit when it comes to these crazy one-off situations sometimes, which I really hope that in the future that is going to be reconsidered a little bit. Because for me personally, as a build creator or as someone who's mainly plays these types of games because I love the tinkering around in builds or whatever, I love seeing that. All the innovations that we always see from people, no matter who they are, the craziest builds that I've seen have been sometimes by people with like 200 YouTube subscribers, never stream or whatever. You see some crazy stuff on PoE Ninja. I think that is what makes a game like PoE 2 so great. I can understand it, but GGG's perspective, the game is they don't want to have it in a way where it's like completely going crazy on all sides, and they want to keep it in a way where it's controllable for them. But I really hope that in the future they reconsider that stance a little bit and let us make some crazy stuff sometimes without it being like immediately immediately hacked off in the next update, right? Because it's kind of cool.
Now,
I'm
gonna,
curious. Go ahead.
I want to say that part of that probably comes from the fact that they've like been there and done it with PoE 1 for so many years that they kind of have the experience to see kind of where something's going, like the direction it's heading in. And it might be the case that in a lot of these, like for PoE 2 especially, I think when they add something to the game, like the whole like core game was essentially like wholesale taken from PoE 1, right? Like all of the like rare monster mods and things like that to begin with. So they kind of had like this baseline of stuff that they kind of were experienced with and knew how this was going to go. And then they kind of started tweaking things around and like adding new things and like unique things to PoE 2. And I think that in a lot of cases, they probably add these things and they end up being like either way too powerful compared to what they intended, or they're way too underpowered, right? Because they just don't really, they're probably on such a short like time schedule that they don't really have enough time to test these things, or like not fully anyway. And obviously once the players actually get in and play the game, they're going to be able to put in so many more hours than GGG could have ever hoped for in terms of testing. So this is just one of those things where I think, like you touched on it there, they probably want to kind of keep a bit of a handle on the game for now, because they're in this like early phase of the game, and right now, when it comes to 0. They want to keep a handle on it now, because when it comes to 0.1, that's going to be the baseline that players see for the first time. Many players are going to see that baseline for the first time. It's going to be their first experience with the game, and they want it to be a good one, because that's the make or break part for the game, right? Is the 0.1, the free to play. People come and play the game, and they want it to be this really good experience that it sticks, and they want to come back and play it. So I think if you have like things being like completely out of whack, it's like it's yeah. Although I will say this, I do find it kind of interesting that they do some of the build of the weeks. I've been like, this is not something that I would expect them to showcase.
Oh, they're definitely trying to like counterbalance the previous stuff, like where they're like getting flamed.
Yeah. Like a lot of the build of weeks, I've looked at the video and I've been like,
yeah,
this is something that I would absolutely not expect them to shine a light on. Like this is like, what even is this? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, this is someone making some really cool stuff. Like, I'm not opposed to the stuff that the people are making at all. What I'm saying is, like, the reason why we're having this discussion here is because usually what happens is the build gets showcased, then it gets nerfed into oblivion, never to be seen again, right? So they're shining the light on it, like saying, "Hey, like, good job. Like, look at this." Then it's dead. So it's like, there's kind of a, I don't know.
It's weird.
It's like a mixed. I don't know what's going. I don't know what's the messaging there. I don't really know. I don't know. It seems like they're. It could be, yeah. It could be like chat saying there. It could be different teams that are not.
A
even,
viewer, a viewer
talking to
told
each
me.
other.
I don't know if this is a rule. I have no idea. A viewer told me of like the 130 build of the weeks, only 2 people have gotten it twice, and those 2 people were forever ago. So maybe there's like a rule where like a content creator can't get it twice. So like they're constantly having to find just new builds, because like Palstron would like get it like all the time, right? But like I don't assume he hasn't gotten it twice. So I assume that makes the choice. If that's what's going on, I assume that makes the choices a little more limiting. I have no clue though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play on the side of like, I don't like GG isn't as bad as we think about this. So I think like the whole Righteous Fire thing, it's a really cool story, but I do feel like it might be a little bit of a one-off. Where it's like, it sounds like at least Chris was like, oh, this is really cool. Let's kind of like push this archetype a little bit more. And it doesn't seem like that's the norm of what they do, of like, hey, this guy made some super broken thing. Wait a second, this is cool. Let's push it. It doesn't seem like to me that's what they're typically doing. And I would not say that they are always in leaning on the side of like, hey, this is cool, we're gonna nerf it. Because like, if you think about it this way, using Bone Shatter and Whirling Assault to just zoom around the map crazy fast doesn't seem very aligned with like the vision of Path of Exile 2, but yet they've kept it since 0.2. It's been a thing since then. So In fact, it's actually gotten easier to build this league with like some of the minion nodes and like using trench timber and all that stuff. So, I would like to say that they aren't just like taking everything cool and just shutting it down. It's like, just seems to be, and again, it's goes along with what Dreamcore is saying, that they want the baseline of the 1.0 release to be at a certain level. So they kind of set a precedent of like, hey, this is what we want the game to be. And then, as opposed to like you get to 1.0 and everything's just going off the walls.
Yeah, exactly. They just want it to be in a somewhat like, it doesn't have to be perfectly balanced, right? These games never have to be perfectly balanced.
Never.
They just need to be fun every patch, and different enough that you want to log in. But I think if it's like really, really imbalanced, that's where you have a problem. It just needs to have some kind of level of balance going on there, and then just like you said, a good baseline for them to sort of build off of from 0.1 from 1.0. Sorry.
We talked about a little bit there, cast on crit and the state of it. We've talked about it so much on this podcast. What is your thoughts on the whole cock situation?
It's a problem that's born out of the gem socket system, in my opinion. I think that when I looked back at when they first announced the gem socket system for PoE 2, I remember the very first thing that came to my mind was, because this obviously was when it was going to be a PoE 1 update, right? I was like, what is going to happen with Cold Door, right? Because Cold Door in PoE 1, the way you make those builds is like you have a 6 link and you have 2 5 links in your 6 link, and then you have another pseudo 5 link in your helmet, right? Or your gloves or whatever. So you have basically 3 skills that all overlap and have a duration, and they all deal their damage over time. And I was like, okay, how is this gem socket system going to work with a build like Cold Door? Because can't I just socket a bunch of these skills, all 6 linked, right? And it's just going to be insane. Just scale duration is going to be crazy. So obviously that ended up not being a thing, and they're kind of mindful of that. But I think that cast on crit is one of those outliers there, where, and it's kind of like the same with a lot of trigger builds, is that the opportunity cost for using your sockets in this way is just not very high. So you just gain a lot of damage from doing that. Obviously, you have to build around it, but building around it is extremely, extremely good, like extremely strong, right? It's very, very powerful. I think it is a case of where, the whole gem socket system is kind of allowing that to happen. Whereas when you have the real restricting factor in PoE 1 with like the sockets being in your gear, it's very, very difficult to build around those things and make them good. They have been good though in PoE 1. Obviously, they took a bit of a nerf in the most recent patch with the Awakened gem changes, but just generally speaking, that's what I think is the issue there, is the socket system. It could be a bit of a problem with the whole system of like energy gain and stuff like that. That is definitely something different that they're trying in PoE 2. But mostly I think it's just because of the sockets.
That's a very good point. I don't think I've ever heard anyone make that point.
I made that point last week.
Did you? I don't know if he phrased it as eloquently as he did then. No, that's a good point. I think it's just too cheap in general. I think it's just so cheap to get online. Like, you can get a cast on crit build or any cast on build online by 65. Like, that's just that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The opportunity cost of doing it is just not there, right? Like, cast on crit should probably be one of those things where, like, I don't really mind you being able to get it online early if it's kind of feels like fairly balanced in that respect, where it's like it's not that good then, right? Like, other builds may be a little bit better, but you kind of have the automated play style, so there's a bit of a trade-off there. It can't be that it's like very, very powerful and then it's just getting ridiculous in the end game. There needs to be more of a trade-off there, I think. Part of that, of course, is the whole spirit thing. Like, spirit is in a weird place overall for me. I think there needs to be more interesting spirit gem options overall.
Yeah.
And there's definitely like a bit of a weird imbalance there with spirit gems and like the whole where you are on the tree and what defensive mechanic you're using and things like that. So yeah, it's it's a bit. I think it's also a bit of a difficult problem for them to solve as well, because it's a system that's kind of baked into like not just the spirit system and the whole like energy system. They've got like all of these things stacking on top of each other that kind of enables it. So I'm not really sure how they're going to go about it, but it is definitely an issue.
Yeah,
I mean, it's exactly what I think about it as well. What I mentioned before was that in Path of Exile 1, there's only so many items you can get a full six link on, right? And you can get pseudo 6 links for, maybe your helmet or something like that. But in order to fully get like a cast on build, which does exist in Path of Exile 1 online, you need to invest a full 6 links to really make that like shine as like a main damage skill in Path of Exile 1. And that's kind of how the balance there happens, because there is a huge opportunity cost, like you said, right, to slotting that cast on in Path of Exile 1. You can't just willy-nilly just throw it on there. And when it comes to like the way that spirit gems work right now, you can just do that. And the other thing I said in the past was that right now there's just not that many other options really that are competitive with cast on builds for spell casters. In fact, if you took away the cast on X stuff for spellcasters, I don't even know what you would fill your other spirit slots with if you were to, put spirit into your build. And there is a lot of like spirit scaling for spellcasters. Actually, they kind of have a lot of stuff. Like, for example, Infernalist has it completely built into the class ascendancy to be able to scale spirit, as like an example. Or like, Abyssal Lich is something that really benefits off of scaling spirit. Like, so there's a lot of ways to scale spirit as a spellcaster, but there's not that much stuff you can really use that is good outside of cast on. So it's like both. I do think that the ceiling of itself is too powerful and the opportunity cost is too low, and that's compounded by the fact that I don't think that there's anything else that you'd really use as another option for it. So potentially, as we see more skills come out, see more spirit gems come out, it might start getting a little bit more competitive at the top for it. But at the same time, I do think that the fundamental design of it makes it so that it's very hard to get to that level of where it starts getting competitive with cast on.
I do remember you saying this like almost word for word last week. When you do the weekly podcast, sometimes you get podcast brain soup and it all just kind of gets jumbled together. That's funny. Yeah, I think I do think like maybe like you have like those spirit gems. I think in the last week I said you give them the companion effect, where companions take like a percentage of your spirit, so it's not a flat number anymore. It's just if you're spirit sacking, it's way more punishing. But I also like the idea, maybe like how like the spirit, like each gem row takes up like 1 row. Maybe those like have like take up 2 rows, so you're giving up an additional row, because some builds you end up pushing them pretty far. But it is funny that you talk about the spirit gem thing, because I was watching Rabbit stream this morning and he was literally sitting there at his level 1 spirit gem choice, and he's like, no, Withering Presence is actually not that good. Like, he's literally shit-talking all the starting caster ones. He's like, I guess we're just taking Arctic Armor because that can save your life sometimes, and it's good for new players. Yep. Like, that is the state of the caster Spirit Gem, so you're absolutely right.
Yeah, Spirit's been an interesting one, I think, for PoE too. It's an interesting mechanic, the change between, what they did in PoE 1, where they kind of had this issue of most builds just reserving all of their mana against like auras and other reservation skills. Then they created Spirit to kind of solve that issue, but they're kind of suffering from the same problems as what mana had in that game, where it's just like if you don't have, like, for example, mana wasn't really a thing that most builds could use anyway in PoE 1, because they didn't really have the tools to make use of that resource, right? And it's kind of the same thing in PoE 2, like unless you have like access to specific tools, you're not really going to use your mana for too much, right? You can maybe build in some damage taken from mana before life or something if you have access to some places on the tree, or other gear pieces and things like that. But most of the time, you're probably just not going to be making use of that resource too much and not scaling it too much on builds that just can't make it there. So I think they're kind of suffering from a bit of the same issue there, where Spirit is being used in this way, where it's like, yeah, there's not really, like you said, the options are not really there yet. I think this is something, again, that's going to be so the same as what we were talking about earlier with the weapon types, where it feels like most builds that are using one weapon type kind of feel quite similar. I think this is going to be a thing where we got to wait and see with it, because like there's going to be better options coming for Spirit. It's just going to come in waves with the new weapon types that they add and the new classes and things like that. So there's going to be more and more options there. But Cast on Grid is a separate thing. That's something that they need to actually get onto and fix it in a special way, because that's something that's not going to really be solved by adding more Spirit Gems, unless of course the new Spirit Gems they add are really, really powerful to compete with that.
Question to the panel real quick. I've only played, like, I've done Cast on Ailment alongside Cast on Crit, but I've never done a different Cast on as my primary Cast on. Is it specifically Cast on Crit that is the outlier because of just how good Crit is in the game, or are the other Cast ons equally a problem?
I wanted to say why you were all discussing Cast on the whole time. I was like, just say Cast on Crit, because we always like in this kind of discussion we always go like Cast on like there's any other. It is Cast on Crit.
I've
in
seen
the end.
Cast
the
on
other ones were insane though, right? Back in like 0.1 they were ridiculous. The other ones like
Cast on Freeze
Ignite was
especially
absolutely insane, and Cast on Freeze,
And Cast on Minion Death this league is doing a surprising amount of work as well. Like it's
Didn't
not
Sarge
just
get number 1 with it? Minion Death?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Oh, I think it was Detonate Dead is what you're thinking.
Detonate Dead.
It's Detonate Dead.
Yeah, but Cast on Minion Death is surprisingly like, doing quite a bit more on the utility side of things, but I don't think it, maybe in the current state of the meta, right, it might just be a Cast on Crit, but I can see Cast on COEA being really powerful, because if you are able to take advantage of all 3 ailments, that gives a lot of energy.
Yeah, and Evoker's really good at that too.
I just feel like most of the people or most builds that are using Cast on Elemental Ailment are already using Cast on Crit, and they're just like they're just dumping
just
their
as
remaining
add-on.
Spirit. Yeah, exactly. And exactly like you described, like they just have the remaining Spirit, and there's just no better option than to just put it on top of there. And yeah, it's just basically because Crit is so prevalent in all of the builds, because it's the main way for 90% of players to scale their damage. It's just Crit, so Cast on Crit just makes sense. I don't even think this is like bad, and it's just logical at this point. I just wish, like we already said, that in the future, hopefully, there's just gonna be more options. It's not just gonna be Crit in terms of damage scaling. It's not just gonna be Cast on Crit as a result of that being like this obvious choice. I would like there to be more things to choose from when it comes to that, because right now, why wouldn't you use it? It's once again Path of least resistance, right? So yeah,
Crit's just way too strong at the moment in the game. Has been for the basically the whole duration of PoE 2. It's just been ridiculous. I'm really surprised they haven't like that. Crit alongside energy shield scaling on the tree is the 2 things that I'm like most. I'm like, what is happening here? Actually,
it's all on the tree
like
too. Like the tree is doing too much of the heavy lifting. Like that's the one example where the tree is actually overpowered with Crit and energy shield builds.
Imagine the tree would be half
on
as
life on tree, right? Like they say that life on tree is going to be mandatory if it's on the tree. Well, guess what? It's already mandatory for energy shield builds to take the energy shield wheels on the tree. So, and same with Crit builds, right? Taking the Crit wheels. But life in particular is the interesting one, because it's like the whole reason why life on the tree makes sense is that you have the basic defense on that side of the tree is armor, and armor needs life, like actual life scaling to work, because you need effective hit pool to actually make that stat work defensively, right? Like you're making the trade-off there. I'm scaling mitigation versus scaling raw hit pool on the other side of the tree. But if I don't have any hit pool to back up my mitigation, I'm just dead every time anyway. So,
all the people that were waiting on this episode for us to mention life on tree are just rejoicing right now. They're all like, "Oh my god! It took them 1 hour and 20 minutes to finally mention life on tree." Just so in case you don't know, Dream, we mentioned this
every week,
literally every single episode, because it does not make a single like sense. It does not make sense. You cannot tell me that it is like for some reason we don't want this type of life scaling on the tree, while I am able to have a base of 1,000 energy shield and scale that to 22,000 or whatever. It just does not. It just does not make sense. It doesn't. So we mention it every single time until they finally do it or something. I don't know.
And on top of that, it's like life builds, like people, like armor builds, even a lot of times are just flipping it, where it's like, well, instead of using my life as my life pool, I'm gonna go use mana as my life pool then, and use my life as mana, like because you can scale mana a lot better than you can scale life. So people end up building life on the tree, but they do it in like workaround, like
because they
randomly put together, thrown together ways. Because exactly, it's like they have to find a way to get that life pool, but they can't do it with life, so they're going to do it elsewhere.
We talked about that, right? That we have reached complete Twilight Zone at the point where it's like life is that bad that people rather use life as like a blood mage, where one version is to use the blood mage and then use your life as mana, or use the covenant or whatever. It's covenant, right?
Yeah.
Or use the covenant to then use your mana as your life pool, because you can't scale life. And you can at least you can get like 5,000 mana and use mind over matter or whatever to have that as your life pool, because it's just out of the question to use life as your. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And I'm not even a life enjoyer. I abuse energy shield for a year now, and I still.
Because you see the issue there, and you want it to be, you want to have the option to actually play those life builds. Like, it always feels bad. I've played mostly life builds, and it's always the same. It's just a lot of the balance in the game. Like I said, you have things like damage over time stuff that just absolutely ruins life builds. Like, I mean, look at Abyss League, right? Where you just like stood on top of the abyss and just insta died to any kind of damage over time on a life build. Just happened over and over again, right? So that's just I don't know. Like that is something that's just confused me. Every time it comes up, they always say that it's something that they think is mandatory, but that is not. We already have.
It should be
mandatory
mandatory
in the game.
Though. Yeah, it should be mandatory.
Yeah,
your life is. Yeah, like it makes it. But it makes the thing that pisses me off the most is like with energy shield, it's like a few nodes you have to take. But if you're doing life stacking, that means you're either giga life stacking with leech, so that means you need investment into lots of leech nodes, or you're giga life stacking with armor, which you really can't get a super high life while you're also investing heavily into all the armor passives. It's just like. You're having to give an arm and a leg just to like be comparative, but like your life can't get high enough with either scenario to make the leech make you unkillable or make the armor make you unkillable. I've done a lot of life stack builds specifically in 0.4, and 2 builds I got to like a really high life pool, but they were having to use uniques to do so. And like, there's no way to scale life otherwise. Like, you have to have the grand spectrums. Like, you're probably using something like Kucher of Crimson if you're doing the leech style, and it's like, it's rough. You're very pigeonholed with life builds.
I mean,
as someone, Miso, please.
Oh, I was just saying that I think that life is, in most games, the baseline for survivability. So it doesn't make sense that we can't use life as a survivability like mechanic in Path of Exile 2. Most people coming into the game, a new player, right? This game is supposed to be catering towards that new player, more casual player, are going to come in being like, how do I scale my survivability? Oh, let's get more life. But then you can't get enough life to scale survivability. So it just doesn't make sense from a fundamental level.
As someone who 90% of his builds between 0.1 and 0.4 has been like energy shield builds. For the I think it was the second Wind League where I actually wanted to make a life build work for the first time, like actually real. I did it before, even like on the featured GGG build. That was like a life build, but long story short, for the first time, I actually tried to make a life armor build work, and I just as someone who has been using energy shield, I just couldn't believe it. because people kept telling me, dude, I'm telling you, it will become good. But the hoops I had to go through to get to the point where the same effect on energy shield would have literally been just pick 3 nodes on the passive tree and not have anything like that on your gear or whatever, was just crazy to me. And I couldn't really believe it that was actually the situation that we had in this game. I think it's the most ridiculous dichotomy that we have in this game right now. It just does not make sense. Everyone was telling me, oh, you get 88,000 armor, and then you become unkillable. But also, by the way, at the same time, on your gear, you need armor applies to elemental damage. Oh yeah, but fuck. And also, there's a thing on your helmet that you can get. It's another suffix that you just have to give up on the suffix slot. You get chaos damage also applies to armor. It's ridiculous. Whether
88,000 armor is ridiculous, by the way. Like,
yes, it is.
Most normal builds are not even getting like 20,000 armor. Okay, let alone 80,000. Like, come on.
Oh yeah,
like, it's just ridiculous.
And crit resistance.
I've seen people like
crit resistance. You also need.
Yeah, I've seen people make the argument that like armor is good when you like scale into it, but you really do have to go like hard on it, like ridiculously hard on it to make it really good.
And the way is atrocious.
I no longer go life stacking when playing the bottom half of the tree, or armor stacking. I used to be like trying to make armor stacking work. I purely go life stacking with leech now. Just getting as much life as you can, and leeching is your best defensive layer. Like the amount of like you have to sacrifice for like you can make armor work, but it's not going to be like a league start viable. You're going to be like day 5 or 6, like having to put like hundreds of divines to get the armor good enough to where you're surviving, juiced maps, and it's rough.
I think Shaman has made things a little bit better in that you start going towards like a full Ellie conversion where you're taking like most of your damage, converting most of the damage you're taking from Fizz into Ellie, and then going into like, like a Gore Girdle setup. Like that works out. I've seen it work really, do wonders this patch. But again, it's like you gotta invest so much into it. Literally, you gotta invest multiple pieces of equipment, invest your ascendancy, and then like, yeah.
Yeah, but that was a thing again though. Like they've had this in PoE 1, right? They had it for a while where you could get tons of Fizz taken out, and yeah, they were the strongest builds in the game. Like surprise, surprise, when you just take all the damage as elemental and then scale your res, yeah, it's going to be really, really strong. And then they had to come in and nerf that, right, and make it so that people couldn't reach 100% anymore. Like they can again now, by the way, because there's been a bunch of power creep since then and more items added and things like that. But like back then, yeah, almost all of the strongest builds in the game were doing that exact setup with, full Fizz conversion to be taken as elemental. And then you're just really, really tanky.
Yeah, that's how you have to play PoE 2 life builds right now. It's you want to get damage taken before life before mana, ideally get mind over matter. You want to take as many like of those conversions as possible, where it's like some towards elemental. I think there's the molten shell passive that gives you like 5% of physical to fire. There's like you just have to stack and stack and stack, and then still you're not as strong as ES. Like so.
Yeah. That also just sounds like avoid life as your defensive layer as much as possible. That's
one of the things. One of the things I really want to see in PoE 2, like in the next several patches, like 0.5 or whatever. If there's a patch between now and the 1.0 patch, whenever that comes, it's just them addressing defenses, because defenses in this game is something that just like really, really irritates me. To be honest, it's so annoying that there's like such an obvious imbalance there. Like when you just cut the tree in half and just like, it almost looks like 2 different people designed this, like, and they didn't talk to each other at all, right? When it comes to the like the defensive setup there. For me, like PoE 1 became so much more interesting over time as they added more and more defensive. And by the way, back when I first started PoE 1, defenses in the game were not good at all. They were also really bad. Basically you had to build block or dodge on every character. Like every character had like you'd either spec into block or you go like attack, dodge, and spell dodge, right, back then. And then around like patch 3.15, 3.16, they kind of reworked evasion and armor, and they reworked the defensive auras, and they started to add over time, over many patches, they started to add more and more interesting defensive options. And I'm a player that likes to build characters that are more tanky. Like I'm not really a huge fan of like glass cannon builds. Like to build more tanky characters, more recovery, this type of stuff. And that made the game much more interesting for me because at the end of the day, it's an ARPG, right? You want to be able to satisfy whatever power fantasy someone wants to make. If that's a character that is ridiculously tanky, let them make that character, right? Like, let them make it like on lots of different archetypes, not just one. This is a question that came up in the Ziz interview. I'm sure you guys remember this, where Zizaran asked Jonathan about how, like, why is it that we can build characters that can one-shot a boss, but we can't build a character that can tank the boss's hits, right? Like, why? Where's the, would it be more interesting watching a character that one-shots a boss and you don't see any of the boss's mechanics, right? Because the boss just instantly dies, or watching a character that doesn't do any damage, hits like a wet noodle, right? But can actually tank the hits and you can actually get to see the boss mechanics. And now I'd argue that both of them are pretty bad, right, from a viewer perspective. But it should be the case that you can do either. And in PoE 1, over time, you've actually been able to do more and more of the interesting defensive stuff. The damage has always been there, almost always, at least since I've been playing. But the defensive stuff is something that I'd really like to see in PoE 2. Like, I just want to see more interesting defenses. Again, I'm pretty confident that it's going to come over time, but the baseline, what they're building off of right now, is not good. That there's a massive imbalance right now, and that should probably be addressed first.
I think it was the Ziggy D interview, Miso probably knows, where they straight up said they don't know what's wrong with armor. It was one of the Ziggy D interviews. Like, they said they know, you know the quote I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They straight up said they know there's something wrong with armor, they just don't know what it is.
They don't know how to
like,
fix
that's
it.
Just straight up what they said. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
They said we know armor's underpowered, but we at the moment don't know how to fix it. But I mean, actually reading into that and thinking about it, I also think that it's a little bit misleading, and I think it was probably worded very badly, because I think that part of it is also the fact that we don't have some tools that we have in Path of Exile 1 in the game yet because of the lack of classes. I alluded to in my duelist, I mean, it's supposed, I guess, technically it's supposed to be named Gladiator, I think. If we look at the art book, it's not supposed to be Duelist. But either way, Duelist, Gladiator, whatever the other class is. I alluded to this in my video, but Champion in Path of Exile 1 has a big focus around fortification. And that's an entire defensive layer that we're missing in Path of Exile 2. So I think, like, maybe it might have been a little bit misleading about, like, oh, we don't know how to fix it, but it might have been like, we don't know how to fix it in the current game state with the tools that we have for the classes in the game right now. Maybe down the line, as they add more classes, as they add more of these defensive layers, these problems might get fixed, but at the moment they might not. But I still do think life is necessary on the tree. But I do think potentially you might be getting Fortify with this upcoming, if we get Duelist, Gladiator, or whatever, and that could help further solve some of these problems that we have in the game. And as I kept thinking about this, I think, like, I'm not sure why endurance charges just give more to global defenses as opposed to something like PoE 1, where it's just a damage reduction. And I feel like that is just a much better, like, mitigation layer compared to what it is in PoE 2, which, again, on its baseline, it doesn't give anything, but at least if you're using charge regulation, you do get something from it, and it gives, like, global, like, it just gives defense as opposed to something more useful like DR.
Yeah, there's a lot of those things missing from PoE 2, like you said, in endurance charges, fortify. All these things kind of combine together, like Molten Shell, for example, for armor. All these things combine together to make armor work as a mechanic. And the baseline of armor is actually quite decent. You can actually scale it quite well. And just investing into a bit of armor along with these other things, like ways to build up endurance charges, and then maybe you get a bit of fortify or some kind of, like, max res scaling on that side of the tree. You feel like you can build a pretty solid character. You also have the life scaling, of course, which is probably the main part. Like, if we're to account for all of those things, the life scaling is probably the main and the first thing that has to be there, because you just can't really make this kind of low hit pool work with all of these mitigation layers, right? Because the other problem there is that if you don't have the life scaling, right, you kind of have this like expected amount of life where the mitigation has to work. And then when you actually introduce life scaling in ways that like other builds can't access, like ridiculous unique items, right, that give crazy amounts of life scaling, suddenly these mitigation layers are completely bonkers, right, on those because your life is like maybe 50% higher than what like another build might have, and then it's like now it doesn't really work. Now it's just completely broken, right? So I think it's a case they need to add these things in to make that whole side of the tree and like the defensive makeup of that tree on that side actually work.
Yeah, we're missing 3 core classes to the bottom left-hand side of the tree. So that is, who knows what changes are coming with those. Well, quick little question. We are 90 minutes into the podcast, and we haven't touched the show notes yet.
I was about to say that it is. This has got to be some record, because we do this every single podcast episode. We have show notes and we just start talking, and but this one is especially good.
This is the longest we've gone. How are we on time, guys? Do we need to wrap up in 30 minutes, or could we go over? Just no worries. Just let me know where we're at in time. Are you guys good to go over?
I can probably go for another 30 minutes.
Okay, Rabbit and Miso, you good with that?
Another 30 minutes as in 30 minutes over, or 30 minutes as in like 30 minutes from now?
30 minutes from now.
Okay. Then which one of these topics do you guys want to go over the most? We got gem skill levels, build progression in PoE 2, and uniques.
Definitely gem skill levels. That's
I've seen this topic on Reddit pop up a lot. So let's talk about gem skill levels then. Gem skill levels are in an interesting point. I think everyone agrees that +7 on weapons is way too much, but I feel like gem skill levels as a whole really make most unique items just not compete at all. If there's a slot that can have gem skill levels on it, and the unique doesn't have it, it's very niche situations where you can use that unique oftentimes. What are your just general thoughts, Dreamcore, on the balance of gem skill levels and just how they're set up right now?
Yeah, it's just providing way too much power, like relative to every other scaler in the game. Like when I think about gem skill levels, it's like you compare it to other scalers. It doesn't need to be like most other things in the game. Doesn't need to be completely balanced, right? That's not the point. But the way that like a single modifier on your items, like in a lot of cases, it's 2 modifiers on 2 items, right? It comes from your weapon and then 1 from your amulet. For melee builds, it might also be on your gloves. But you're getting so much damage from those 2 or 3 modifiers is actually absurd. Like the percentage of damage you're gaining for your entire build from just those 3 modifiers alone, ridiculous. I've made several videos on this. Like this is something that I really want to see addressed. You touched on it there. There shouldn't be as many gem levels. I think it should also be harder to get the gem levels. Like the amulet is a really good example here. In PoE 1, to get a +2 amulet, you need to do a very specific crafting to get it, and it's 2 modifiers, right? It's 1 global for all skills, and then it's another that's specific to a particular tag, like a fire skill gem levels, right? So then you got a +2 amulet, and then you might have a unique that grants +3 gem levels, but it's only for 1 specific skill. Right, and then you might not be able to get other good stats on the amulet. The fact that you can get this, +3 gem levels on 1 modifier on an amulet, and then you also have the gem levels on the weapon, which, okay, +7 is ridiculous. You touched on that there, but obviously +5 from the essence of battle is also just absurd. Even +5 is absurd. I'm sorry, even +5 is too much. But I'm just going to say it, +5 is ridiculous. It needs to be like, I don't even know if the weapon should give any gem levels. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think it should. Like, I don't think it should give any gem levels at all. Just get them gone from the weapon, and then make the amulet 2 modifiers for a total of +2. Okay, that's it. One thing that I think PoE 2 done well, by the way, is that gem levels actually feel meaningful for attack skills. PoE 1 didn't do this very well. It was like, gem levels are mostly a spell thing, right? If you're scaling your flat damage from spell gem levels, then that's what you do. Sometimes you might get flat damage elsewhere, but usually it's from gem levels. I like that PoE 2 has kind of enabled gem levels on attack builds a little bit more. But yeah, gem level scaling is ridiculous. I'm not a fan.
I think apart from it being ridiculous, especially on weapons, and like completely disconnected from this whole discussion, that is absolutely right that it devalues all like so many uniques, not just in the weapon slot and whatever. I just think it would be in such a cooler place if it was actually like such a it would, right now it is just baseline. It is not exciting to get it. You just it's a mandatory thing to get it, whether you are playing through the campaign or through endgame. It's like, oh, where's my gem level? Where's my gem levels on my weapon or whatever? I just did another caster campaign run today on my stream, and it was once again my whole play in the campaign was just like, oh, I need to get a weapon ASAP with gem levels. I don't care about anything else, especially on a caster build. I don't care about anything else. I was suffering until towards the end of Act 2 because I didn't get a wand with plus gem levels. Then I got a staff with +2 all spells and some other good stats, and the game just completely changed completely. I think as the first thing, that is just not good. Even like if you disconnect it from the whole unique aspect, I think on the other side, it could also just be such a cool modifier for like special items. Having like a +1 on a specific amulet, or having like a +1 on a belt or a ring or whatever, would just make it so special. I can only draw the comparison to Diablo 2 again, where it's just like in the itemization department, it's just like getting that +1 belt, like Arachnid Mesh or whatever. It just automatically makes for such a special item, where now we just have a situation where it's just mandatory. It's like the baseline. Everyone, I need a weapon with +7, I need an amulet with +3, and whatever else I can get. As opposed, where I kind of think it would be so much more exciting, where it's just like, oh my god, I got a +1 amulet. You know, it's like I just think there's a way better approach to the whole gem level system that would benefit not just the campaign but also the end game. And as a bonus on top, you make so many more uniques and so many more unique playstyles with these uniques less devalued.
I think once again, I'm going to bring up Crimson's point about how gem level scaling, especially on spells, is way too exponential on the high end, where you really are super incentivized to push spell levels really high and gem levels really high in that aspect. So it's like that's how it becomes like the best scaler in the game. The fact that you just get so much power from scaling one level at the high end. So I think it's, for me, I see it as a twofold problem of too many levels on equipment that should 100% go down, and then also it's too like beneficial, especially for spells, to get your levels up to really high level. It's not like, because if you're just going like level 23, 24, 25, it's not that bad. But then it starts getting really powerful when you get to like 30, 32, 35, 38. Like those, every single level just gives you so much power. It's crazy.
I forgot something in my previous point. Also, Prism of Belief becomes like, oh my god, you know, it doesn't have to be +3. I think if you completely reduce all the skill gem levels on every single gear, or you remove it outright basically on gear, that way I think +3 for the Prism of Belief is probably a little bit too much. But like imagine +1 or +2, that like Prism of Belief becomes like, oh my god, it becomes such a cool chase unique, and that drops on arguably the most important or like the most end game boss in the game. So just once again opens up like, oh my god, arbiter farming, maybe I can get a Prism of Belief for this specific skill or whatever.
I think Prism of Belief is a little bit in a weird spot, to be honest, because it does give like it plus it like it gives so much power, but it's like there's, especially as we get more and more skills into the game, getting a good Prism of Belief gets harder and harder and harder, and makes it more and more like exponentially expensive. And it's going to be a situation where that guy is going to have the +3, or if that's the ceiling for the most meta spell, but then there's like 100, 200 spells, and you're like, well, I guess only one guy in the entire, league is going to get it. So I while I do think Prism of Belief is interesting, I think making it more important and making it more valuable is also a slippery slope.
If you gave it to 3, because right now you can't 3-1 Prisms of Belief. If you could 3-1 them and start gambling them, that would, increase the odds of fishing for skill gems. I like prisms. I love items like that. Maybe it's not prisms I like, but I just love bosses with chase uniques that you can farm for.
They could do something interesting with that item. They made a really interesting item in PoE 1 in Mirage, the Screams of the Desiccated Belt, which is the Shrine Belt. And obviously, when that drops, it's very, very common item.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is something that they maybe kind of changed during that development week, because people kind of had the big reaction to the belt being shown in the live stream. They're like, this is crazy belt, it's insane. It's better than Mage Blood. Like, people were saying all this, right? So I think their reaction to it was like, okay, we're going to make a 1 shrine belt, and then we'll keep the 2 shrine, but make it very rare. And I think that's a really interesting way to do a boss drop, where it's like, you actually get the excitement of identifying the item very often. And very often it's bad. But it means that you actually get the excitement of identifying it and having the potential to identify something good. They could do that with Prism of Belief. It could be that if they go in and fix the gem levels, and they actually make this gem, instead of it being tied to a specific skill, it's +1 all skills, right? And then it very rarely rolls +2 all skills, right? But you get that kind of fun of identifying it, right? Or when it drops, it's like, this is, it dropped. Maybe it drops very often, but it's like +1, and then you could have a very, very rare chance of getting +2, and you obviously can't divine it or anything like that. It's just that's it. So that's I think they can lean on that sort of idea of boss drops, because it's fun to have those kind of boss drops in the game. Ones that people actually they're not necessarily always powerful or something that every build has to have, but it's something that almost everyone is excited to find and identify, right? That's a really, really good way of doing it, I think.
You just perfectly described Against the Darkness farming to me. Like, that is exactly what Against the Darkness farming is. You get one every time. Most of the time you identify it pays for the run you did, but every once in a while you get that spirit roll, and it's like, I got half a mirror.
And we need more of that. I feel like this is like that just, it also adds to endgame, by the way. This kind of content. This kind of content is what people do, no matter what the other endgame content is. Once again, good example, Diablo 2. Diablo 2 hasn't changed for 20 years. People still play the game hours and hours and hours because of the item hunt and the item chase. I know I've been saying this way too much on this podcast, and I apologize for mentioning Diablo 2 again, but it's just like it's such a good example. We need more of that. And I also think that these in the discussion of the Prism of Belief, for example, I feel like having these types of holy grail items, for me personally, I think that's a good thing. I always like this. I personally, and people are once again gonna say in the comments, yeah, of course you think that because you invest 16 hours into the game, because you do this as a job, you don't have a family, blah blah blah. All the comments that we already had on the last podcast, because I said I like the game to be harder or like the ceiling to be raised. But I just feel like that is something that everyone can have like a good experience with. Yes, most of us are never gonna get these holy grail items in a league or whatever. Most of us are never gonna drop a mirror. Most of us in a league, I've played PoE 2 for 5,000 hours now. In every single league, I've never dropped a mirror. I'm not like, oh damn, it feels so bad not to drop a mirror. We need these chases, because whether you play 100 hours every league or 10 hours or 1,000 hours every league, there is a chance that you hit the lottery, and it feels good. And I think that is what an ARPG is about, like crazily. And speaking about bells, getting the shrine bells in PoE 1, how was your experience there, Miso? I was just thinking of you while we were talking about that.
Oh, his mirror.
No, not the mirror. It's just every time I farm the shrine bells, I have not hit a single one of them. I mean, granted, I have.
The mirror took away all his luck on those.
It's like even just getting the drop was tough sometimes, which is crazy because the bell's pretty common. But I would go for some dry spells
I didn't know the belt couldn't drop until I watched Miso stream, because I got the belt every time I had killed the boss. Like, I'm not trolling with that. He went like 15 kills with no belt.
Oh, that's
I have
not
a question for you guys.
That's
about
crazy.
That's a lot.
Oh, okay. I remember
That's
I remember seeing the staff a lot on your stream though.
It was like 4 or 5 for a streak.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys, because this is something I saw complained about on Reddit. And I want to start with you, Miso, because you have a more grounded viewpoint with the casual audience. I saw people complaining on Reddit about some of the skills starting at too high of a level. I think Flicker Strike is an example where you don't get to start using it until you're basically out of the campaign. And a lot of the players out there, I mean, especially with the last few episodes we've been talking about the campaign, a lot of people, the campaign is the game for them, and some of them quit very quickly after the campaign. A skill like Flicker Strike never being used for so long seems potentially like a missed opportunity. I know this is pretty common with some builds in PoE 1 where you don't play your real build until the end game. You have to transition later on sometimes, but I'm just curious what your guys' general thoughts are on just the general skill structuring. Is 58 a good, reasonable level for a lot of the highest level gem skills?
I mean, that was an interesting topic, because I don't really even think it's like a casual audience perspective on that one. I just think it's
or 52, design. Whatever the level is.
Yeah, I just think it's game design. It would be nice to be able to use some of these skills earlier on, but like, one, you put Flicker Strike on a level 1 character, it's not doing anything. You don't have charges for it.
Of course not, right? Level 1, yeah.
And a lot, but I think it's just, if you think about it, in most games, it's like character progression, skill progression, right? As you level up, you get access to more and more skills, more and more cool skills. That's just how RPGs work. So like, from a basic standpoint, it's just like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that as you get a higher level, you get access to more and cooler skills. But I think that at the end of the day, it's just a design choice whether or not they want to do that. I forget, because like, I think even like Path of Exile 1, for example, when you make an alt character, you do have access to like every single gem in the game. I forget if it has a level requirement for level 1 gems for like all skills or not. Dream, do you probably know better than I do.
No, you can't.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so okay, so even in Path of Exile 1 it exists that way, but so I'm not entirely sure like where, for the perspective of people, it's like, I get it's like you want access to some skills earlier on because it's super cool or whatever, but it's like, that's part of the character progression. That's part of like progressing your character levels. You will get access to more and more cool stuff as you grow. There may be an argument like, hey, maybe this gem like Ice Shot should be a level 1 skill as opposed to what it is right now. You get access to like level 40 or something like that. But I do think at a baseline level, it makes sense to have that level progression for skills, because it's just how, you get the idea of progression. You get the sense of progression that way.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some progression there, 100%. I think they could slim down the whole like gem tiering system so that it's not as many tiers. Like maybe it caps out at around level 30 instead of 50 or like 52 or whatever it is. I'd like to see some of those like quote unquote stronger skills, the ones that you get towards the end of the campaign, coming in a bit earlier in the campaign, maybe like towards the end of Act 2 or something like that, is where I think they would be pretty nice. But generally speaking, you do kind of need that whole progression element. I know that a lot of people would like to just immediately start the skill from the beginning, right? But I do think the progression element should be there. It should probably just be a little bit sooner towards the earlier part of the campaign, rather than towards the end, that you actually get to play the skill that you want to play.
Rabbit.
I think it also depends a little bit. Like for example, Flicker Strike is a good example where I do realize, like, where I do think it's very reasonable to have it as one of the last ones. It really just depends. I think I just did a fresh run today, just Act 1 to Act 3, and I was kind of thinking the same. Damn, like a little bit earlier, I could definitely use Dark Effigy a little bit earlier. I don't think it's like no harm having that a little bit earlier in your arsenal. I don't know. I think it's like very, very based it's very subjective at sometimes, because this guy will say, oh, he really likes this skill, so he wants to have it basically as level 1. The other person is like, yeah, I don't miss that one. I think it's just very, very subjective, but I don't think there would be any harm in toning it down a little bit, or as Dreamcore said, just slimming it down a little bit on in general. Maybe just have the highest ceiling like 10 levels lower or whatever. I don't because at the moment level 52 is the highest one, like level 9 skill gems or whatever it is, and that is in the interludes. I think that might be a little bit, or when the game is actually 6 acts, that will probably be towards the end of Act 5 or whatever.
I think it's like
And
end of
yeah,
Act
that
4. Is that end of Act
yeah,
4?
and I think that might be a little bit too late, depending on the skill, obviously. But yeah, very, very subjective. I think you will always have people complaining about either or, because they really miss this skill or they really like this one. This guy really wants to play Flicker Strike in Clearfell. This person really wants to do. I don't even know what the other ones are. The very, very high ones. So
Hammer of the Gods or whatever.
yeah, that's always going to be a subjective thing. As we get more skills into the game, maybe that will change as well, because there's going to be a plethora of skills in the lower levels that are just going to be awesome for people to use, that they kind of forget about the ones that they're missing. So I think Dreamcore earlier said like one of his biggest gripes with PoE 2, I don't quite remember, but it was in the vein of skills and whatever. And I think talking about the state of PoE 2 and how finished it actually feels, I think one of the biggest parts, even though PoE 2 is probably one of the best examples for an early access game that feels finished, that feels like a polished and finished product, especially compared to other games. For me personally, one field where PoE 2 still feels a little bit unfinished is the skills department. I do feel like we're still lacking a lot of the stuff and a lot of the potential that we will eventually have. But right now, I think there's still a lot to be desired when it comes to just skill variety and what skills we can actually use, both in campaign and in the end game. So I'd really like them to focus on that a lot in the future, and that is tied to characters and weapon sets or weapon types. So yeah, I think that is still definitely something. People always make fun of me that I always play ED Contagion and Plans, but on the caster side, it's like, what is there?
How could you always play plants? They only came into the game just now, dude. What do you mean?
Yeah, no,
He's played it like 3 different times already.
And I already see like almost it's like an unfinished game. It's the same thing. Yes, of course, it is an unfinished game, but it's just like we're saying when we're talking about balance, no one is asking for perfect balance. And like also on the podcast, we are not asking for perfect balance. Just like I'm not asking for a perfect game right now where we have everything. I know. It's just like it's a wish. It is something that we wish for the future that a large focus will be on. It's always going to be subjective. It's always going to be from a perspective of us, like content creators and people who have maybe more time to spend on the game than other people. Yes, no one is asking for the perfect stuff right away. This is just like a direction we would like to see. So
feedback has to be given. Cool.
Yeah, I think the skills point is a good one though. Like I said earlier, more skills for each weapon type, and skills that overlap weapon types are going to do. That's going to do a lot of work towards making it feel that builds are not kind of always very similar to each other. So that's something that I want to see. But that's going to come in time, I think. I don't know about the cross weapon thing. I don't know. Jonathan didn't seem like he wanted to concede on that when he was questioned about it, but that's something I'd like to see. But obviously we're going to get more skills, more skills for maces, more skills for bows and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the skill pages are missing a lot of slots still, and who knows if they end up, expanding even beyond what can fit in the page eventually. The long development cycle ahead of us. It was a pleasure having you on, man. Thank you so much for making the time to come on our little podcast.
Yeah, it was a really, really fun chat with you guys. I think this is the first time I'm talking to all three of you. So, yeah. And I look forward to seeing you guys at ExileCon later this year.
Yeah, we'll hopefully try and get you back on for next league. Go ahead and do your shout-outs, plug yourself. Where can people find you?
Yeah, Dreamcore GG on YouTube. I just do, mechanics, breakdowns and stuff like that. I'll be doing stuff for Path of Exile 2 for the new league coming up. And I also have a new podcast there, so you can catch me in Powerstron with a guest every week for a new pod. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a bunch. And yeah, we'll link your stuff down below. Miso, let's go ahead and get our outro going.
Yeah, as per usual, twitch.tv/Shiro, YouTube Shiro. I am pretty much fully back in the swing of things with Path of Exile 2. I played a little bit of Maple Story Classic last night, but I don't think I'm going to be doing that much more of that on stream. But yeah, come check me out there. Come hang out. It's a good time.
Mr. Rabbit.
Yeah, I'm back to streaming PoE 2 as well. Today was super exciting. There was like some speedrun tech that that I implemented in the ED Contagion build now, so I had a blast today. Really hope I'm not gonna talk about the tech, so they don't nerf it. Yes, I also stream PoE 2. I will also be the next guest on Dreamcore's podcast. I just heard. I don't know. I don't know. I'm still waiting for the confirmation here. I think so. I think my agent is talking to his agent right now. So good to know. Good to know. Just damn, chat. Like everyone's so excited about that.
Engagement baiting.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be funny.
And yeah, and for anybody who is sitting here like, oh, they're gonna make an announcement, just to give you guys a little bit of comfort. Hopefully they do, but also the 0.2 announcement, 0.3 announcement didn't happen until like 7 hours later. So we still got time in the day.
Yeah, announcement can still happen. We're coping out of our minds. Next week, we got Darth Microtransaction back. Going to be an exciting episode. Yeah, but thanks for everybody for hanging out. We will be back next week. And while you're waiting for next week, join Dead Rabbit's chat and ask him about the campaign skip. Bye!
Asshole!
Peace.
What?